Good morning. It's September 26th, and this is To My Liberal Friends. Well, here we are again with Congress at a stalemate. So who will blink first in the current shutdown fight? Now, if you read the news and other media outlets, it appears that both sides are willing to take the risk and allow the government to cease operating. Now, I should point out that not all government functions will stop, but enough that will get the public's attention. The Trump team has already listed the programs that will continue regardless of a shutdown. So security checks will be mailed out, Medicare will be taken care of, military operations, veterans benefits, border security, air traffic control. And the recent reconciliation bill helped ensure that they function. If we go back to last March, when the previous fight over government funding was going on, it was Democratic leader Chuck Schumer that blinked. And I said at the time Schumer did what he thought was the correct thing, and I still believe that. But this time around, after a heavy dose of criticism from him last March and the threat of being ousted as the Democratic leader, Schumer's between a rock and a hard place and cannot vote for the funding bill passed by the House of Representatives. He has the additional threat of squad member Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez making noise about challenging him in a primary in 2028. Now, before I go any further, if I were Schumer, I'd call her bluff. She wins in an ultra-blue district, and I highly doubt she's going to play well outside of New York City. But looking at the Democratic caucus as a whole, there are some cracks that are forming in their resolve to force a showdown with the Republicans. They have to be looking at the Senate map in 2026 and trying to decide how a government shutdown will play in those races. One such senator is Jeanine Sheehan from New Hampshire. She's retiring in 2026, but she fully understands that her Senate seat will be a contested one. For that reason, the reports are she's been reaching out to some Republican friends about what it would take to make some sort of deal or mutual understanding that might get the votes to keep the government in operation. And Sheehan's not alone. There are other members of the Democratic caucus that have to be looking for some form of compromise. This will divide the caucus because the hard left, led by Bernie Sanders and other progressives, are adamant that they want their demands on health care and Medicaid acceded to before they deliver their votes. Now, Republican Majority John Thune has made it clear that there is support for the continuation of Obamacare subsidies, but he wants a clean continuing resolution in place before they move on that subject in an individual appropriations bill. If the truth is told, Thune's correct and is trying to steer the Senate back to some form of regular order where they start passing appropriations bills one by one. The subsidies would be included in the HHS appropriations. Donald Trump, being who he is, has gone on the offensive on the possibility of a shutdown. He suggested that federal agencies and departments should use any shutdown as justification for agencies to look at workforce reductions on programs that are not consistent with his administration's priorities. That makes Democrats nervous because Trump is always a wild card and the least predictable politician in this whole scenario. For the Democrats, it raises a tough question about whether it's worth triggering a shutdown over the Obamacare subsidies that most of them now understand they'll get in the individual bill. That means eventually it comes down to head counts. It will take at least 8 Democrats to break with Schumer to pass a stopgap spending bill. And that's a difficult ask. And I'm not sure enough of them will want to oppose their leader. But if you're looking for where those votes might come from, I would proffer this list. Certainly Jeanine Sheehan would have to be included. As I said, she's already reaching out to friends on the Republican side. And that would mean her colleague from New Hampshire, Maggie Hassan, would more than likely follow the lead of Sheehan. Catherine Cortez Masto, the Democrat from Nevada, has not said how she would vote. And Nevada's become a swing state that Trump won last year. That has to be playing in her mind as she decides how she's going to vote. New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand and Angus King, an independent from Maine that caucuses with the Democrats, both voted for the bill in March and would have to be considered potential yes votes. I suspect Gillibrand a little tougher if Schumer stays where he is. John Fetterman has become a wild card in the Senate and has broke with the party more than any other senator. He has said he would like to see some deal get done. Fetterman has become the new Joe Manchin in trying to be the swing vote on multiple issues. He voted for the measure last week, so I think he'll vote to keep the government open. Michigan Senator Gary Peters is another possibility now that Michigan has become more of a swing state. He also voted for the bill last time, and he's retiring from the Senate. He wants to see that stay with the Democrats, so he might be willing to compromise. A long shot would be Senator Dick Durbin, another retiring senator, but he's from a deep blue state. But he could be behind the scenes trying to force a deal. Then we have Jon Ossoff from Georgia. He's going to face a very strong challenge in 26, and he might be looking at the polls before casting his vote. I've always said the most important part of these decisions is how they impact the individual senators' re-election plans. We have until Tuesday at midnight to see how this plays out. Right now, the odds are high we'll have a government shutdown. The question then will be for how long before anyone blinks and a deal is reached. Trump has one other card to play that will rattle Democrats. In the past, whenever there's been a shutdown, government workers have been paid for the days they were off. If Trump were to announce that they would not be paid, then Democrats would have to pay attention. Government workers are a key part of the Democratic coalition, and they don't want to lose their paychecks. This has been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening.